How's it going, everyone? We gotta go over something that I honestly can't believe it is happening, and I'm chuckling a little bit because whenever Ubisoft, of all publishers, listen to their consumers and listen to the gaming populace, it's a time to celebrate. Look, we crap on Ubisoft all the time, and I think for a lot of the reasons people crap on Ubisoft is deservedly so, but give them props when it's due. I guess to an extent this should be expected out of gaming, but my expectations out of some of these publishers are bottom of the barrel these days. So when I hear something pretty good like what Ubisoft is doing with their online titles, I get a little bit excited and I give them maybe a little bit too much credit, but we'll talk about that. On top of that, a game that deserves all the credit in the world is Black Myth Wukong. It has reached a staggering sales number, and on top of that, an expansion is in development. We'll talk that in a little bit, but first of all, the Crew's official Twitter account noted, "We heard your concerns about access to the Crew games. Today we want to express our commitment to the future of the Crew and the Crew Motorfest. We can confirm an offline mode to ensure long-term access to both titles. Stay tuned for more news in the next months." Again, I'll always say this when we talk about stories like this. The Crew has an audience, and there's an audience that's incredibly invested into it. If you're not into the Crew, this might seem like a nothing story and you won't care. If you assess it as its own single story, it's not that big of a deal. However, when you look at the larger picture of gaming these days, especially what happened to the Crew 1, where that game was a title that people paid $60 for. Not only $60 for, there are people that paid a lot of money for microtransactions. There are a lot of people that paid money for deluxe editions, ultimate editions, I forget the exact tier structure for the Crew, that was a decade ago, but you get the idea, and that game was essentially revoked. And it brought up a lot of question as far as what is the actual ownership that gamers have for their video games that they spend a lot of money on. If Ubisoft can come in, shut down a game, and then suddenly your game, even if it's a physical copy, this isn't an issue of digital versus physical, your physical copy becomes a coaster, your digital copy becomes irrelevant, you are out all that money you spent, and sure, you could say the game is a decade old, you should have gotten your playtime out of it. However, if I buy anything else, a physical good, let's say I buy a wooden chair 10 years from now, that wooden chair, if I maintain it, it should still be my possession. In the case of video games, that has really been brought into question. And I get it that the Crew isn't the biggest game in the world. However, there was so much vitriol, so much pushback to the Crew that I do think an EA, a Ubisoft, some of these juggernaut publishers, at least with some of their games, they're gonna recount and assess, okay, people obviously don't like this, and if they continue to do it, you're just gonna continue to draw on the ire of the consumer. Ubisoft is, let's be honest here, one of the most hated publishers in all of gaming right now. I'm not gonna say they're the most hated, but let's be honest with ourselves as far as their perception in the gaming world. You look at them and how they were perceived, 12, 13 years ago to how they're perceived now. Ubisoft is the butt of a lot of jokes. Ubisoft puts out a lot of games that are monetized to the nth degree, and when you couple Ubisoft's business practices on top of them just essentially pulling ownership of your games, that makes them even more hated. I don't think they're gonna go away from doing $130 Ultimate Editions with fake early access and all this stuff. DLC that probably should be in the game day one. I think that is just gonna be a part of the business structure of Ubisoft going forward because they deem that that's how they can make money. However, in the case of just pulling games from your consumer, that actively doesn't make you any money outside of if you want to make the argument, oh, it pushes people towards picking up the newer iteration of the game, but I think in a lot of instances, it's going to push people away and make people concerned as far as the longevity of their purchases, and they'll question whether or not they should buy these games. It's at least a good sign that the pushback from the consumer actually did give Ubisoft a little bit of a check, and they are going ahead, and they are committing to Crew 2 and the Crew Motorfest having offline components. Another online racing title that came out recently, Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, that's a game that is online only. That game is structured in a way where I've seen some people make the argument an offline mode can't be created. I think an offline mode can always be created for these games, and it's just up to the developer and publisher to figure it out and invest some resources in making it happen. But in the case of the Crew, at least this is a good sign. And again, it means more for gaming as a whole, because you don't want to see stuff like this happen regularly with other titles, and there's a lot of games in the future that if they decide not to have an offline component, and it's just GG after that. What's gonna happen in 20 years? Like, there's a lot of people that want to go back and play games from 20 years ago, and game preservation has become a big point of discussion these days, and at the very least, this is a step in the right direction. I expect very little out of Ubisoft in terms of doing things that are consumer friendly and that they are actually appeasing their fan base and they're appeasing the gaming populace as a whole, but in this case, they're doing something that I think everybody can at least be happy about. Now, you can obviously make the argument, why are we giving them praise for something that should have been in the game in the first place? This shouldn't have to be a point of discussion. Yes, I agree with you, but it is a point of discussion. Ubisoft's expectations out of me and a lot of other people are in the bottom of the barrel, so this is a good sign. Moving on from that, another good side, seeing an incredible game that dropped a little while ago receive incredible success. Black Myth Wukong sales have topped 18 million and an expansion is confirmed to be in development. 18 million units is an absolutely staggering number. Obviously, this game was a milestone success in China and is legitimately, if you really assess what Black Myth Wukong is, this is legitimately one of the most important video games of all time because of its success in China. It's gonna potentially open up a lot of doors, and if you actually look into the story of game science and how this game came to fruition, it is a pretty wild story, and they risked a lot, bringing Black Myth Wukong to the forefront. But it's great to see that this game was not only a big success in China, but it was also a gigantic success over here in the West, and I think it's also gonna open up a lot of eyes as far as the types of games consumers want. You know, there's been this heavy push, this gargantuan push towards live service gaming, and that's not gonna go away anytime in the near future. Look, when you've got executives that are chasing the bag, live service is the ultimate bag that you can potentially get. It's also a gigantic risk, as you've seen with Concord and a lot of other games. Concord is not the only game, but there's also a market that is desperate for high-quality single-player games. Games with cool aesthetic designs, games that are visually pleasing, games that are stylish as all hell, games that cater for an audience that I feel like gaming has pushed away a little bit or has pushed to the wayside so they can chase a different audience. And for Black Myth Wukong to be this level of success, for it being a new IP, for it being a game from an unknown studio, getting this level of success is fantastic. I point out Stellar Blade and Black Myth Wukong as two games that kind of go against the grain a little bit, that are new IPs, that are single-player big-budget titles at $60 or $70, and that have been gigantic successes. I would argue Stellar Blade would have been a huge monumental success if that game did get a PC release right out the gate. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Black Myth did, and I do feel like that benefited the game greatly as opposed to being a PlayStation 5 exclusive outright and not being on PC. But we can't ever quantify the success of Stellar Blade had it gotten a PC release. What we can say is Black Myth Wukong has been a gigantic success, and it's getting an expansion, it's getting more content. Interested to see if they develop upon this more. We do know that I believe Black Myth as an IP is going to be developed more, and they'll be tackling different Chinese stories. So, you know, that's pretty exciting. And if Game Science is now on the table as another premier studio, whether they do a follow-up to Black Myth Wukong outside of this expansion or they just do a new game, Game Science will now be known as the studio that did Black Myth Wukong, and they can build upon this, and they can build a lot of goodwill, which they are a studio that has a ton of goodwill right now. A great time for them to build upon that, so really happy to see that, and really happy to see two monumental new IP single-player titles just be incredible successes this year with Stellar Blade and Black Myth Wukong. More of that would be awesome. But that's gonna do it for me. Again, great news as far as the Crew and the Crew Motorfest goes. Crew 2 and Crew Motorfest. The Crew 1, that's GG. That game ain't coming back. At least I assume it ain't coming back. But, you know, as far as the future, hopefully this was a learning experience for Ubisoft, and it's gonna be better things ahead. And Black Myth Wukong has hit 18 million copies sold, and an expansion is currently in development that's going to offer even more content. That's going to do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Sound off there. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.